So Trump looks poised to win 2020 fairly easily, in my opinion. Hold on, the video it just has pulled up. Oh my gosh, I allow blocker and this happens. Look at this. Okay, so headline says a U.S. Today poll: impeached or not, Trump leads his Democratic rivals for another term. What this article basically says is that in a poll, again, it was only 1,000 people. It wasn't very, I wouldn't call it, very wide-reaching or anything. But what it basically shows is that impeachment hasn't bothered any of the voters who are going to vote for Trump in 2020. This isn't that surprising. It's very partisan. It's very, it's too partisan to really to do anything to a strong Republican voter. I think I saw a poll a few weeks ago that said registered Republicans have like a 94% approval rating. I've heard headlines, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that he has higher approval ratings within the Republican Party than Ronald Reagan did. So it's not like he's suffering at all from this impeachment. Again, partisan, pretty much all Democrat. No Republican is going to vote for it, maybe one or two. And in the Senate, surely he's not going to get impeached. You don't have, 10 or whatever it is amount of Republican senators who are going to, defect to the other side and impeach him. It's not going to happen. And then what would you have? You have Vice President Pence. Like, come on, it's not really feasible. It never really was. And I think the American public is starting to wake up to that. I just have a few points I've written down about further why I don't think he is really going to have any difficulty winning again in 2020. The trade war with China, they just hammered out a trade deal. Apparently, phase one of the trade deal, they're going to head back into talks. These things are slow, so who knows how long it'll be before a final trade deal is pushed through for both countries. But what it does show is it shows that he's been strong on what he promised. He said, we're going to take care of China, trade deal with China. North Korea, he walks across the border. No more wars. We're not in really any more wars. Granted, he did put some more troops into Syria, and this Iran thing seems to be a little suspicious in my opinion in terms of, the war drums are beating for war with Iran. But that started way before he was president, and I haven't seen him in particular either tweet or have any sort of policy that's signaling we're about to enter into some, global war or global catastrophe or any sort of military action in that capacity. And I don't think war with Iran is going to be happening within the time frame up until 2020. Also because Israel, who is probably their biggest foe, Israel and Saudi Arabia in the region, Israel's been plagued with their third election in the last year. So their government is in shambles, basically. So who knows how that's going to turn out. So what that means is that their foreign policy isn't going to be trying to push, they're not going to start a war. They're not going to do ridiculous military action because they frankly don't have the government to do it. Some of the things I have, like I said, was saying the economy is very strong right now. The stock market's up. All economic indicators that I've looked at are up. That unemployment is down. There hasn't been a recession. Doesn't look like there's going to be a recession. If there is, it will happen right around 2020 is my prediction. If there is one, but again, doesn't really look like there is. Some of this job growth is slowing, but I think that overall the economy seems pretty stable. And the Federal Reserve has said it's going to stop or it's going to push back an interest rate decrease. I think. I wish they would decrease a little bit more, but they seem to be wanting to keep everything just kind of churning along the way it is. So this is all good for him. You look at Obama in, 2012, his election against Mitt Romney. The economy was relatively stable. We were seeing, a rise out of the 2008 recession that he inherited. And overall, economic indicators said it's not going to go back down. And I think what people see when they're voting for president, especially an incumbent president like Trump or Obama or Bush or any of these presidents, they want the country and the economy and all of these different things to stay relatively stable. They don't necessarily want to switch sides because who knows what that's going to get. We've had 4 years of Trump, or 3 years now, I guess. And, life goes on, sun comes up, economy goes along, slow increases, whatever. Nothing has really been that, bombastic or, that much of a shift. There's no major wars. I have written down right here. There really aren't, like I mentioned, Syria and whatnot. But I don't see any sort of Afghanistan-esque amount of troops deployed or money being spent in that. And it seems to be that our foreign policy has relatively been isolationist with his NATO. All of his different NATO policies, but other countries need to pay their share. He doesn't seem to be very bloodthirsty. Not that A lot of other presidents have, but in particular, I don't think Trump is willing to start wars, especially since that would damage his reputation as the guy who wants to stop all the wars. Impeachment isn't really going anywhere, like I was saying. It's largely partisan, so not really that big of a deal, and I don't think it's going to swing anyone. It just kind of riles up both sides, and honestly could help Trump win by a larger margin because of people who are so against his impeachment. But again, I don't think it's going to really do much. The Obamacare mandate is expiring because they're not going to renew it, so that's a good sign for people who are against Obamacare or can't afford healthcare and don't want to be penalized for it. So again, I just don't see the need to replace the administration if I'm going to take the position of just a run of the road Republican or run of the road independent. Everything seems to be going well, fine. Jobs are increasing. People are spending money, people are saving money. It just doesn't seem there's not that volatility that would lead someone to switch sides or vote for a Democrat if they already voted for Trump. Again, they're probably going to stick with him and they're going to show up and all of these things. So another major part of this is that when I look at the Democrats' side, you don't really have too many viable candidates. You've got Biden in the lead. You've got Elizabeth Warren. You've got Pete Buttigieg, he's starting to rise in the polls actually, which is not that surprising. But I'm going to be interested to see if he can wedge his way past one of the major ones. You've got Bernie Sanders. But I think there's so many different camps within the Democratic side. And I made this in one of my first videos that I put out on this channel. It was called Why Trump Will Win in 2020. It was a few months ago. I guess this would be the sequel and why he still will win. But in that, I basically broke up the Democrats into a few different camps. You have the Democratic Socialists, the AOC types, the Bernie Sanders, I guess, would be their candidate. You've got the middle-of-the-road Obama era, neoliberal, just Democrat, which is Joe Biden. You've kind of got the progressive wing, which was Kamala and Cory Booker and right now Elizabeth Warren, who's still left. And then you've got kind of the I guess independent is the word I would use, which is the Andrew Yangs, the Tulsi Gabbards, the odd candidates who don't really fit within the Democrat mold right now, but who may signal a push towards that direction in the future, or a rejection of those ideas, and we will see, honestly. So with those three camps, I don't really see a lot of crossover between the two. I don't see a diehard Biden supporter, or if he even has supporters at this point. I don't know. It might just be people so fed up with the rest of the Democrats that they're just I'll go for the simple choice, Biden. But I don't see any of them being convinced by a Bernie Sanders or an Elizabeth Warren. Just like I don't see a Bernie Sanders supporter or an Elizabeth Warren supporter being convinced by Joe Biden. I just see there's too much of a disconnect, and you saw this in the UK election, and with the Labour Party was so split between Remain and Leave that voters didn't really know what they were going to get. So if they were Leave, they couldn't vote for Labour, even if the MP running in their district was pro-Leave, because the party itself didn't really seem to have a coherent position on that. Now, I don't think the 2020 election is such a single issue. I think it really is just has Trump pissed off his voters at all? And I don't think he has, especially because of that 94% approval rating that I saw. So because the window or the zeitgeist, whatever you want to call it, is relatively stable, I just don't see a chance that anyone can wedge him out. And because of the fracturedness on the Democratic side, and that you've got people who really the polls haven't moved too much in terms of who is really staying at those top three positions. It's consistently been Biden. I think Biden, Sanders, Warren, or maybe Warren and Sanders are flipped, I'm not sure. But you haven't really seen anyone come in, knock someone out, and then stay steady, except Pete Buttigieg, who has been slowly and steadily, I think he's at 13 or 14% right now, based on the poll I just saw. And it's looking like he kind of is I don't know what to say, the new face of the neoliberal Democrats, the corporate Democrats. I'm not saying he's really a corporate candidate, but he's just kind of that, put together, suit and tie, serious, doesn't really get into his personal life, doesn't really get into any of the more identity politics that seem to be popular with, the Elizabeth Warrens, the Kamala Harrises, the Bernie Sanders a little bit. So I see him, if they do choose him, that would be a very odd choice, obviously, because he's so far low in the polls, but it would be probably the best counter to Trump, because you have a bombastic, orange man who tweets, erratically and all of these different things. So that is not stable, obviously. So if you're an independent who values stability over, draining the swamp or building the wall or all of these different, buzzwords that Trump has kind of invented, I could see an independent in that position voting for Pete Buttigieg or a Joe Biden. But again, I think the two camps of the Democrats are mainly the new and the old. The shaker-uppers, the ones who want to go in and do something radically different than what Democrats have done in the past. And those are namely Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Again, the Joe Biden types I feel like there would be a lot of overlap in a Pete Buttigieg supporter and a Joe Biden supporter, simply because they're both run-of-the-mill, normal, your average Democrat. Nothing too extreme, nothing too radical, no crazy policies, no, Medicare for all, no, democratic socialism. They're just mainstream Democrats. So if the Democratic Party can, in the next year or so, bridge that divide and find a candidate, or maybe one of the candidates steps up and fills that position of, how do you mix the new and the old? Is neoliberalism compatible in any sort of way with this new democratic socialist movement? I don't personally think there is. I think that it's kind of the writing's already on the wall. If you can't reconcile the two different ideas, then I think the whole thing's going to blow up, and you're going to see a very similar result to the UK election, with the Tories basically sweeping the entire parliament. Something I was thinking about is, if, let's say, 2020 goes to Trump, how is the Democratic Party going to restructure itself? Who is going to win out? Because you have a lot of young voters who are in support of the who are in support of the democratic socialist movement, the radical movement, that shake the house type of movement, and they cannot. I don't think that they're going to be convinced to vote for someone like Joe Biden or someone like Pete Buttigieg, simply because they're too stable, like I was saying. So if they win out and Nancy Pelosi, loses her, position as Speaker of the House, or just her legitimacy as what do Democrats, who is the face of the Democrats, in America, then I think we'll see a radical shift to the left. The smart thing to do, if I were a Democratic strategist, would be to distance yourselves from that block, from that voting block, simply because if you want to get that independent vote, you're not going to be able to do that if you have someone so far on the left that, an independent would never vote for them and would rather just stay home than vote for Trump or, a Bernie Sanders. So basically that's kind of my thoughts. Not super detailed, not too much data, but basically I think Trump is going to win simply because, like this poll says, impeached or not, Trump leads his Democratic rivals. Impeachment hasn't hurt him. There's really not been a scandal that has hurt him in any way. His policies, rather uneventful, I guess you could say. The tax cut. So if you're an independent voter who, likes lower taxes, that alone is enough to get you to pull the trigger for Trump, possibly. But I just don't see, the world has not been flipped upside down by his presidency. A lot of things have changed, sure, but I think that's more in the social or tech sphere, in terms of social media, in terms of people reacting to him or analyzing him in some way. But again, he seems to be just kind of chugging along. And I think that right now, the American public, the independent voters who are unsure about who they're going to vote for, like the fact that America is just chugging along, slow and steady, and nothing is really, there's no upheaval. So because of that, unless the Democrats can find something damning on Trump, which I don't think they will, because they kind of already did in 2016 with, the tape, the grab 'em tape, and all of these other things. And they've been continually trying to get this impeachment thing going, but again, it kind of just fizzled out. It's going to the Senate now, and I don't think it will do anything in the Senate. And if anything, Republicans might actually be able to kind of flip it on its head and maybe almost win the public perception in impeachment, simply because they're going to be able to just, interrogate witnesses, cross-examine, and just really, show that this whole thing really is just a partisan political theater. So that's about it. I'll probably put up another video in the next few days. So if you have any ideas, let me know. And hope you guys are all doing well. Have a good night.